there aren't many story elements that could make a story compelling as a good antagonist. I would not go as far as to say they could make or break a story. It depends on the type of story being told, but a good villain that is written well could carry a story alone even if other elements of that story might be lacking. We can take Madara Uchiha from Naruto as an example. Even if the 4th Ninja War arc of Naruto is considered to be the weakest among Naruto's arc, some would say that arc was heavily carried by the predominant antagonist of that arc, Madara Uchiha, a character who's a force of nature metaphorically and literally in the story of Naruto, challenging our heroes to the brink of their limits, challenging them physically and ideologically. That's what a good villain can do. They could elevate a story to new heights that could have never been thought achievable, and a certain antagonist that did that for me was Nowak from Orb on the Movements of the Earth. I wouldn't say Nowak carried the story of Orb because the story of Orb had so many good things besides its antagonist, but it would be a total miss if one talked about the story of Orb without mentioning its antagonist, Nowak. But before we go any further, please make sure to subscribe to my channel. I talk all things anime and manga, and without further ado, let's get back into the video. The story of Orb is about a group of people, highly educated people in our case, from generation to generation, passing down a forbidden research. That research being heliocentrism, which places the sun as the center of the solar system. And during the 15th century Europe, that was not the prevailing belief about the world, and we've got our protagonists who do this research and the inquisitors who are trying to suppress this knowledge, labeling those who delve into this research as heretics. And our main antagonist is Nowak, the one we see constantly breathing down the necks of our protagonists throughout generations. You thought Dio was a menace for his villainy towards the JoJos for generations? Dio can't hold a candle to Nowak. This guy is a persistent pain in the ass for our protagonists, generation after generation, getting the better of our protagonists. There is nothing this man wouldn't do to fulfill his own sense of justice. He's brutal, smart, and cunning, and he does all this with an apathetic expression on his face. And the infuriating thing about all of this is, for most of the story, it feels like he's winning. He is responsible for almost all of the deaths of our protagonists. He doesn't even relent to a 12-year-old boy in Raphael. But me saying all this, I feel like I've painted him as just a brute who is sadistically evil. But Nowak is not that. One small thing that sold me on Nowak was when Raphael was on trial, and it seemed like Raphael was going to agree to the terms of Nowak, and he was going to hand all the research papers that he inherited from Hubert being the guy who taught Raphael about heliocentrism. And Raphael is in front of the judge and everybody else, and there is a look of relief on Nowak's face because he thought Raphael was going to yield. But when Raphael pulled a 180, we can see the look of shock and concern on Nowak's face. You might take it that he was just astounded at the defiance a little boy showed risking his life, or maybe the realization that he's going to have to execute this little boy brought that expression on his face. And we can understand from this little scenes that Nowak is a guy who's just doing his job, a job that he truly believes is in God's service. In his mind, he's doing the right thing. And me personally, I hate this type of characters, not because these types of characters tend to be written poorly, but because the idea of them infuriates me. People who think they are in the right and in their minds they are the heroes, but in reality they are the true villains. This reminds me of Quero Mado, one of the antagonist characters in Tokyo Ghoul. Mado as well, he is one of the characters who thinks he's in the right by killing ghouls, and the story endears us to the ghoul characters, so you hate him in Tokyo Ghoul, but that doesn't mean he's a poorly written character. Another character that comes to mind when thinking of antagonists who think they are in the right is Gabi from Attack on Titan. When I first read the Marley arc of Attack on Titan and saw the actions and beliefs of Gabi, man did I hate her. And I'm not the only one in that camp. A lot of Attack on Titan fans hated her. It just goes to show you antagonists who think they are in the right but are actually doing no good are hateable AF. And Nowak isn't that camp for me. And again, I'll reiterate, a character you dislike and the bad character are not always one and the same. Nowak is a brilliantly written character that you're meant to dislike, and the author of the story succeeds at doing that. We see Nowak torturing people and committing many atrocities casually, all because he thinks he's in the right, and it is infuriating. Another aspect of Nowak's character that is really done well is the fear and terror that he invokes in us anytime when he is near our protagonists. That scene in the tavern when Badeni, Yolenta, and Oxy were there sitting and chatting, and Nowak approaches them, sits with them, and starts socializing with them. That scene was nerve-wracking AF. My reaction was the same as Oxy's when watching that scene. There's no any super magical world-threatening event going on. It's just a guy who is conversing with his daughter and her acquaintances, and it was so intense. Not to mention when it looked like he was leaving and comes to subtly interrogate Oxy and Badeni. Nothing goes past this guy. He's just really that good at his job. Just goes to show you how great of an antagonist he is. He is the perfect antagonist for this story. A story about people who fight for the truth and a man who misguidedly thinks that he is on truth's side, hunting them down. It's just brilliant writing. He is an antagonist that us the audience could almost see ourselves in. He would be the hero except for that slight warping of worldview. Like I said before, the reason Nowak is committing all the atrocities that he does, the murders, the torture, and etc., the reason he's apathetic while committing all these heinous deeds that are concerned evil is not because he's an evil dude. I mean, I have to admit, back then, draconian and barbaric methods to do things was the norm. But as we see in the story, Nowak takes it to a whole other level. Even the people he was mentoring were disturbed by his methods of torture. We see that during the scene when Nowak was interrogating a woman who used some herbs for medicine, and no wonder that was considered witchcraft during that time, but the two boys were extremely disturbed by Nowak's action. And it's not the fact that he did it that was disturbing. I mean, the boys knew what they were getting themselves into. They were training themselves to become inquisitors. But the fact that Nowak was so nonchalant about it was the disturbing part. The fact that he was a mercenary in the past might have led to his apathetic nature. He might have seen a lot of blood and gore back in his mercenary days, and that's why he's so numb to it all. But when it comes to his incessant, adamant nature towards eradicating heliocentrism, that purely emanates from the lesson he was taught by religious leaders of that time, telling him it was hearsay and him believing blindly that it was the right thing without questioning. But the funny thing about this all is that he did question it, but it was the wrong question. He was puzzled by the fact the heretics kept popping up and asked the question, why do they keep popping up? Instead of asking why the heretics fight so adamantly for the beliefs and understanding them. While watching Orb, I was sure that Nowak at some point would be puzzled by the fact that heretics kept popping up. When he did that, he took a step closer towards the truth, but he just stopped there. He should have gone further and asked the question of why do they fight adamantly for their beliefs? What could be so important about heliocentrism that they would throw their lives away? But his beliefs kept him from digging further, and it's a tragedy that you see happen in our world as well. People not being able to reach the truth because the beliefs that they already possess inhibits them from reaching it, and that pivotal point happens. The point in the story where we start feeling bad for Nowak, or at least some of us did, because at this point we get introduced to a truly evil person in Anthony, the authoritarian son of the bishop, because this guy, unlike Nowak, who is misguided, this guy knows what he is doing and he doesn't care for the suffering of others as long as it aids him. We see that when he falsely accuses Yolenta of witchcraft, and whole lots of events happen that puts Yolenta as the leader of the heretic group, and then old Nowak was falsely told that his daughter died, so old man Nowak and the Inquisition is going to hunt the heretics, and we see Yolenta sacrifice herself to let her people escape, and This moment was truly sad because we have here an old Nowak who's a bitter old man, but for some of us this was satisfying, seeing Nowak in this miserable state because of all the atrocities he had committed. But when that scene unfolds where Yolanta using gunpowder blows herself up in front of her dad, damn, that was really sad. And it made me feel for Nowak even more. But the scene that really was profound was when we finally see Nowak and Anthony face to face, and Anthony reveals the fact that heliocentrism was not the heresy that us the audience thought it to be, but it was actually an order that was given by a bishop who resented heliocentrism because of his model that he spent his whole life working on is not true. Hearing this, Nowak is devastated, but Nowak being Nowak doesn't really let himself be fazed by this revelation and kills Anthony and wounds our protagonist. But as he is dying, it actually gets revealed Nowak knew the woman that blew herself up was Yolanta, and we see that the love for his daughter that he has while holding her glove, it was humanizing seeing this brutish inquisitor that we've all come to know and his final moments ending in such a way. If you've made it this far, please subscribe to the channel. Also, don't forget to leave a like, and with that said, see you in the next one.